Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to have a discussion about some spoilers that Kuro Games has put in for us. It's actually also going to involve some spoilers of the story as well for the main quest of version 2.7. So if you're super concerned about those, feel free to maybe skip around a little bit. It's going to be a discussion about an upcoming character and the echo that they're actually going to use. So with that out of the way, let's just orient the discussion about who we're going to be talking about. You could probably tell from the title or thumbnail, it's going to be about Chisa. And this unit over here was essentially drip marketed along with the rest of the Septimont/Frolova cast all the way back in version 2.3. Think your characters like your Augustas, your Yunos, your Chuyons, your Galbrenas, and of course, her at the end. And a lot of people have pretty much concluded that she's probably going to be a single banner unit, new unit arriving in version 2.8, and then we're going to close out the rest of the arc because no further characters were teased. And the thing is, when it comes to this unit, we didn't really know much about her at all, other than basically this tagline over here. Incisors. That's because she uses scissors, of the strings of annihilation. And if you're familiar with seeing the term annihilation in Wuthering Waves, well, it's become pretty much hand in hand with Havoc, that attribute. And with her being all red and stuff, not too much of a surprise going on over here. And essentially, with the 2.7 update, we've basically seen a full confirmation about what's going on over here, unless Kuro's doing something a little bit crazy. If you were to go ahead and during your Galbrena journey, you saw that she had a new set, pretty clear over here, it's called Flamewing Shadow, right? And then when you look at, and this is where the story spoilers come in, if you look at the forecasts that are available across Flamewing Shadow, you'll notice that, well, the new weekly boss echo is here. Remini, Thornodian, Leviathan. Just, there you go. So let's just read what this echo skill does real fast. And I'll just equip it so it turns green, even though this is a piece of, this is kind of bad. I'm missing crit rate over here. Summon a collapsing horizon, dealing 2 instances of Havoc damage to nearby targets and obtaining the Core of Collapse for 15 seconds. While it lasts, Core of Collapse deals a 24-something% Havoc damage when the active resonator in the team deals damage. This effect can be triggered once every 0.5 seconds, so it's got like some coordinated attacks sort of deal going on. I don't think they'll count as those. But this is the important part. Enemies with Havoc Bane take 100% more damage from this effect. And the resonator with this echo equipped in the main slot gains a 12% Havoc damage bonus and a 12% Resonance Liberation damage bonus. So you're seeing over here, this is clearly an echo designed for a character that either applies Havoc Bane or is a bit more of like a... I can imagine that this seems a bit more, just from what I'm reading, a bit more of a supportive echo, where the echo does almost no damage at all. 260% motion value is kind of hilariously bad. But then it will continually apply up to 8 times additional damage that can be doubled and go all the way up to maybe like 50%. So you're seeing that the total motion value of this echo can actually get close to 260 plus 8 times 25, or really 8 times 50. This could get close to like 670, 700% motion value on one echo skill, as long as, well, the enemy has Havoc Bane applied on them. And so this is the thing. This is what's going on over here. This is clearly going to be an echo that comes with a different set. The first example of an echo that comes from a different set that we've had is none other than the Fenrico echo, which is clearly designed for a echo skill user that deals arrow damage and heavy attack damage, right? You can kind of see over here what's going on. This set, Dreams of the Lost, which is for Frolova, has almost no use at all for this echo, but it's just sort of there. And the same exact thing is going to be going on with Flamewing Shadow, where this is clearly a set designed to support a fusion character that deals heavy attack and echo skill damage, which Galbrain is kind of like the only one, and the active effect of this echo has no place at all on the character. And, well, just like with other sets, there's probably going to be another way to acquire that same exact echo that we looked at over there, and it'll just arrive on a different set. Much like how Remini Fenrico, well, it started becoming available on the Law of Harmony set after that set was introduced in version, I believe, 2.4. Or, sorry, in version 2.6. So that's what's going on over there. I can imagine that, again, Remedy, Threnodian, Leviathan, it's going to have a new Havoc set that's probably tailored around Havoc Bane, much like how Gusts of Welkin had a set tailored around Arrow Erosion. And then we saw a bunch of these kinds of echoes, right, going ahead and giving that level of support. This is the thing when it comes to Havoc Bane. We don't really know that much about it. So here's some information on actual negative statuses and how they work. Havoc Bane is one that we have not seen in the game before. It's actually only showing up as that tagline for the Leviathan Echo. And what it does is, Havoc Bane accumulates stacks automatically while it remains active. Once it reaches maximum stacks, it deals Havoc damage to the target, removes Havoc Bane, and applies Havoc Bane to nearby characters. So it's one of the only real damage over time effects that we see over here that has this ability to spread, that has this ability to sort of like propagate and, you know, repeatedly apply itself to nearby enemies. Seems like it's clearly designed to be a bit more of like an AoE type of status effect compared to some of the prior ones. And it's not really a damage over time effect, right? It builds up its stacks, and then once it reaches a threshold, it pops, and then deals a certain amount of damage. So at a baseline, this Echo seems to synergize well with how that effect works. It accumulates over time, and then while this Core of Collapse is active, if enemies are in the middle of accumulating those stacks, well, they'll start taking additional damage. And the thing is, it's pretty clear what's going on when it comes out to building any elemental status effect, any negative status effect in this game. There's one core character that seems to enable all of these different interactions. And that is, of course, Rover. Because as we've seen before, Spectro Rover, as soon as we entered Renacida, they gained a special ability, right, in 2.0. They gained the ability to actually go ahead and, well, repeatedly apply Spectral Frazzle along with the Shimmer debuff. This was straight up just added to their kit. That made them a Spectral Frazzle support. And then, later on in the 2.x version, we got the Arrow version of Arrow Rover. And while Arrow Rover can't necessarily go ahead and, you know, apply their own set of elemental debuffs, they can actually convert stacks of other buffs into Arrow Erosion, which is, you know, I think that this has had absolutely no use case in the game thus far. It is a bit of a shame that it's kind of just completely dog shit, but it is what it is. They are the sort of like Arrow Erosion enabler, though, because their weapon, Blood Pack's Pledge, and don't worry, I have both of the refinements, so I'm just keeping it like this for fun. This is just a broken weapon, right? That it gives a shit ton of arrow damage amplification to the entire team, and that just makes them the go-to Arrow Erosion sort of support. You can naturally kind of guess what's going to happen over here. I've been avoiding addressing the elephant in the room when it comes to this part of the game. We have a very high likelihood of Havoc Rover obtaining the ability to do something with Havoc Bane. I think it's pretty clear by now how Kuro is going around with the negative status effects. I think that these teams are inherently a bit more expensive. These teams inherently are, from what we've seen thus far, there are a lot of synergies baked into the roster, where if you have a Zani that doesn't have a Phoebe, another 5-star limited unit, her performance is a little bit rough, right? Her performance is a little bit questionable. Similarly, if you have a Cartithia, but then you don't have the Chakota, that performance can also be seen as potentially a little bit questionable, right? And naturally, I think Kuro's done a way better job with designing Cartithia, where she's way more self-sufficient compared to a Zani without a Phoebe. But there's no lie at all to say that, well, this character's a lot better when you have this character. And the thing is that Kuro Games, I think, has struck some sort of balance. Some people like it, some people don't. I'm personally not the biggest fan of it, where they have the Rover in one of their attribute forms, right? They serve as a cornerstone of the Frazzle team. They serve as a cornerstone of the foundation of the Arrow Erosion team. And I don't have a doubt at all that Havoc Rover is probably going to have some pretty heavy synergy with none other than this unit, who I believe is 1,000% going to be the Havoc Bane, the Havoc Bane sort of DPS or the Havoc Bane sort of support. And the thing is, based off of what that Echo skill that we just looked at actually does, I'm reading what this effect actually is, right? It seems like you would cast this at the end of somebody's rotation and then allow somebody else on the field, because it clearly dictates the active resonator, allow somebody else on the field to actually trigger its effects repeatedly, and then maybe they're the ones that are applying Havoc Bane, or at least keeping its uptime up. So to me, knowing that Havoc Rover is actually a DPS unit, somebody that commands a fair amount of field time, I personally think that they're probably going to have it added into their kit somewhere around their Forte circuit, or maybe their Resonance Liberation, along those lines. And then, you kind of have that situation going on over there. I could, however, also be entirely wrong. And maybe this is a new set for Havoc Rover, and this isn't actually for Chisa at all. But let's be entirely honest here. I don't think Kuro's going to wait until, let's just be real here, 3.0 for details on Chisa's kit and everything like that. And oftentimes, whenever we've seen a mismatching passive bonus like this, much like how we saw Fenrico's mismatching passive bonus, there's always been a character shortly released that takes use of it. So I'm just imagining that Chisa is going to be a Havoc and Resonance Liberation damage dealer of some type, with some Havoc Bane application as well. So what does this mean for the future of the game? I am personally a little bit concerned with their current implementation of Rover and all of these negative status effect teams, because one thing is clear. Rover feels very, very, very necessary for a lot of the existing status effects to actually work, specifically their Arrow version. In the Frazzle teams, you can make do with putting Shorekeeper or or other characters, right, into their slot. But right now, well, in the Arrow Erosion team, unless you have multiple copies of Cartithia, it doesn't feel that good to not have Arrow Rover in it. Because so much of Cartithia's power, right, is based off the fact that Arrow Rover can actually increase the number of Arrow Erosion stacks on the enemy, right? You just need to take a look at, like, her Liberation. Good lord, this thing is long. And you can see over here, right, it deals more damage based on the number of Arrow Erosion stacks on the enemy, up to 5 stacks. The base number of Arrow Erosion stacks is 3, and then Arrow Rover, they've got a mechanic built into their kit that directly addresses that 5-stack situation. Well, they double the number of stacks that are available all the way up to 6. And so without Arrow Rover on your team and this mechanic, you can't actually maximize Cartithia's damage across her rotation. Like, not even close at all, because she also detonates Arrow Erosion stacks, and the more stacks that are on them, the more damage you deal. And the situation that we can clearly see developing going on right now is that that Rover in general is probably going to start feeling a lot more in demand across a lot of different teams. And the end result is that, well, they only have a certain amount of vigor that can be used in the TOA. They only have the ability to be slotted onto one side of Weewa. But we can clearly see over here, they're going to lay the foundation for a lot of different teams. Unless Kuro's going to pull a fast one and not allow Havoc Rover to apply Havoc Bane, when Spectral Rover applies Spectral Frazzle, and then Arrow Rover, right, naturally supports Arrow Erosion a shit ton. It's pretty clear that they're probably going to have something to do with Havoc Bane. And the thing is, I feel like Kuro really needs to start getting into the mindset of providing some of these alternatives, either 4 stars or, more generalized 5-star characters that are able to support these debuffs better. Because the fact of the matter is, if I'm using Arrow Rover everywhere, I'm not going to be able to use Havoc or Spectro. And if Havoc Bane really wants Havoc Rover on their teams, then we're going to end up in a situation where if you want to play the Havoc Bane team and you want to make use of all of these, super cool, super awesome new echo skills and mechanics that are directly interacting with Havoc Bane, does that mean you have to stop playing your Arrow Rover team? Does that mean you have to stop playing your Cartithia team? Are you only going to be able to play one at a time? And are there not going to be any other options unless you maybe want to pull a 5-star limited unit? And that's where we need to start having the conversation of, surely we've gotten to the point where we can have more, I don't know, either like a new 4-star that's a bit more general, or you just start reworking some of the older characters to have them be more interactive with these negative statuses. Because right now, all I can see is this unit getting stretched so horrifically thin, and there's not really a lot of existing alternatives. I think it's safe to say that when it comes to the Arrow Erosion team, there is literally no alternative other than deciding to pull Cartithia's S2. That is currently the only solution right now to replacing Arrow Rover. It's to pull 2 dupes of Cartithia, which with the Coral system is not that big of a deal. But there's simply a lot of people that play games like these that don't really want to pull sequence nodes for units, right? They just want to pull people at S0. They don't want to trivialize the game or make it too easy, right? Which sequence nodes can easily do. But there's not really an option at a certain degree unless you want to severely gimp the output of a character's kit like this. The fact that we haven't really seen any additional support coming out for like the Spectrofrazzle archetype. We haven't really seen any additional support coming out for the Arrow Erosion archetype. We haven't really seen any of those replacements. And yet, with all of that in mind, we're now introducing another new negative status effect. I'm just going to be honest, guys. I think that the community, to a degree, is kind of a little bit scarred from the implementation earlier this year with Spectrofrazzle, this whole teammate reliance thing. And for it to feel like it's being done again, and then there not being any other solutions or any other alternatives for all of these other teams, I'm just hoping that Kuro addresses this soon. I'm just hoping that Kuro does something, gives some news, gives some updates before the release of 2.8 to flesh out these mechanics more, so that it doesn't feel like everything is tied to Rover. If you don't have them, it falls apart. There's no alternatives, and now we're just moving on to the next status effect. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? There's a lot more. We've only done Frazzle. We've only done Arrow Erosion. And shit, there could be a possibility that Kuro is literally going with release order like this. This article was all about Spectrofrazzle at first. Then it went into Arrow Erosion, which was the next negative status effect. Then it's Havoc Bane, which is clearly the next one. I guess they're going to have Fusion Burst afterwards, then Glacio Chafe, and then Electro Flare, right? It seems like it's literally in order. We haven't even finished this one yet, and we're already moving on to this one. Some could say that Spectrofrazzle doesn't even feel finished yet without any 4-star applicators. But we're already on number 3 out of 6. We're already on number 3 out of 6, ladies and gentlemen, when it feels like we only completed like 50, 75% of the work in these ones. And I think that Kuro really needs to address it soon, because I don't think we really want another Zani situation on our hands. I don't think we want another, oh, like, is Cartithia going to be dog shit because of what Zani did? Oh, is Chisa going to be dog shit because of, you know, what Spectrofrazzle looked like? Because it currently, these negative statuses currently have a negative reputation in the game. And it just genuinely looks like right now that, well, we did get some clues and stuff like that. We did get, like, you know, a lot of potential mechanics to be excited about and everything. But I'm going to be real. I feel like a lot of people are looking at this news and they're just like, oh, this is not good. Oh, this sucks. Oh, we're going back to all of this shit again? Because a lot of people like the releases of these units. Because one thing that is clear about Augusta and Yuno is that they have nothing to do at all with, like, external status effects, nothing to do at all with, like, rare stats like Echo skill damage. They just feel like, kind of like souped up 1.0 units. That's how I would describe Augusta and Yuno. They feel like standalone, souped up 1.0 units. And that was a nice break, right? From the months of, like, you know, rather specific archetypes that we've had. But now we're going back to the specific archetypes. And all I'm asking is, hey, can we finish up the old ones first? Can we finish up the old ones first? You know, this one, and then Spectrofrazzle, before we start going full steam ahead with this. Because, again, how are you going to play the Havoc Bane team and the Arrow Erosion team at the same time when there's no actual alternative in the Arrow Erosion team for Arrow Rover? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. But for right now, I do think that this issue needs to be solved sooner rather than later. There's one point of truth, though, that we need to talk about when it comes to these negative status teams. They are actually the most affordable ones in the game. And what I mean by that is to have the full premium Arrow Erosion team, you only need 2 limited units, right? And it is the best version of the team. You need Cartithia, you need Chikona, and then you need, well, Arrow Rover. For the full premium, the best possible Spectrofrazzle team, you also only need 2 limited units. You need Zani, you need Phoebe, and then you also need, of course, Spectral Rover. And the thing is, when you keep that in mind, this whole idea of, you know, the characters being partnered up and stuff, right? I mean, I can't trip about it too much because you only need 2 limited units to complete it. But that all begins to fall apart when you build multiple versions of those teams. it all starts to fall apart when, well, Era Rover is the reason why, or sorry, just Rover in general, is the reason why those teams only need 2 premium units. Because, well, again, when they run out of energy, when they run out of all these resources, you can only use them in one side, then that means you can't use them on the other side. And that's when you start running into some issues. And so the more archetypes we have, the bigger this issue is going to become. And right now, there are already people that are starting to have some issues. Because there are a ton of people that like using Havoc Rover as a DPS, but they can't while doing this, or they're using them as a healer, but they can't while they're doing... You get what I'm talking about over here. It's not that big of an issue now, but it can literally only get worse as time goes on. And there's nothing being done at the moment to sort of mitigate this outcome that we're talking about over here. Let me know what you all thought about this one, ladies and gentlemen. I know there are a lot of people that are excited for this unit, but we also got to think about, especially with this character getting stretched 3 ways to Sunday. I'm talking about Havoc Rover, or I'm talking just about Rover in general over here. I think we've got to be on the lookout for it, because it's going to be a big issue if it's not addressed soon. That'll be that for this one. Let me know what you all thought. Peace.